What is going on YouTube? And today IGN seems to think that Resident Evil can't be remade. We all know the real reason why. They go into some other stuff in this article about why they think it can't be remade to mask the real reason they think it can't be remade, and that's because they think the game is racist. And what's crazy is, this isn't the first time IGN have said this, because this is an old article. This is from 2009, but it was updated in 2012. The editorial is Resident Evil 5 racist? With a question mark. Be interesting to read this article and see how it goes. But now this one is the Resident Evil game that can't be remade. Why? Because they confirm it's racist now in 2024. But let's read this article. With Resident Evil 4's release last year, Capcom's project to remake the glory years of its survival horror series is complete. But as the game's post-credit scene suggests, the remakes aren't over, and so the big question is, where next? The obvious answer is a remake of Resident Evil 5. Well, actually, I'd rather they just went to Code Veronica, but it is what it is. But on the game's 15th anniversary, it's clear that moving forward chronologically will take Capcom's remakes into the series' weakest era, an era of gameplay and narrative decisions best left in the past. The action era, I guess. But I mean, they can make it work. Like, Resident Evil 4 remake is pretty actiony. If they just keep it that level, I don't see why the issue is. Resident Evil 4 is quite similar to Resident Evil 5 anyway. And they could make it 6 the similar way, you know. 6 was a bit too actiony. If they cut it down to like the same as 5 and 4, it could easily work. Resident Evil 5 simply can't be remade, at least not to the standards of Capcom's best work. Why? And so the answer is to not remake, but to rewrite. Ooh, let's get into this. Resident Evil is a survival horror series, not that you'd know that playing Resident Evil 5. Sure, it features a constant flow of horrific imagery, but Resident Evil 5 is an action game through and through. That's evident in its cover shooter mechanics, vehicle chases, on-rail turret sequences, constant... It all speaks to a series that has lost its way rather than reflect on... Yeah, so basically they're just saying there that it's action-packed and not like... We can actually agree with this part here. That I did prefer Resident Evil when it was more survival horror than action. This design appears to be not just a misguided attempt to follow Western successes, but also misreading it of its predecessor. With Resident Evil 4 director Shinji Mikami deftly reinvented the series through the use of new over-shoulder camera angle, yeah. No, all this is great, increasingly powerful weaponry, cannon, all this is to say that a faithful remake of Resident Evil 5 would break Capcom's 7-year streak of brilliant survival horror games. Well, I don't know, Resident Evil 3 sucked ass. Resident Evil 3 was rubbish, you know, so I didn't like that remake. So it's not been a full streak. I think most people agree that that remake was very poor. Like, Resident Evil 2 was great. Some people that even had problems with it at least still consider it passable. Resident Evil 4 was a great remake, minus people like Crobecat. The legend that is Crobecat had his criticisms of that game, and I don't even hate his criticisms. Nothing is ever really perfect, but man, 3 sucked. Anyway, let's not get on a tangent. Here we go. Here's the meat and potatoes. Now, let me just preface this before I read this. A part of me wonders if IGN knew this was going to happen. If IGN knew there was going to be, including me, a bunch of reactionaries that read this article and they're like, oh my God, IGN think Resident Evil 5 is racist. And obviously we all start talking about it, including me, and we just get IGN's article out there more. I don't know if that's their goal. But it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, they're still promoting this dumb bullshit that people will take seriously. That some idiots, some people that share the same skin as me will read this and think, oh yeah, it is racist. IGN are literally utilizing black people's, African people's sensitivity to racism in order to get the reactionaries going so then they can get their article out there. But the thing is, maybe it could be a good thing, because most of the reactionaries will shut this motherfucking shit down. This is what I'm trying to do right now, because this is dumb. I said it was dumb before, and I'll say it again. But let's read this article about the racism stuff, because I agree with the other stuff, but the racism stuff is going a step too far. And I feel like this other stuff was to sugarcoat the actual reason they wanted to make this article. But anyway, so Resident Evil 5's depiction of Africa as a dark continent is harmful. Dark continent? What? The dark, where did they say that in the game? Someone tell me when they said that. Set in the fictional West African country, Resident Evil 5's primary antagonists are black people. Yes, technically it's the Ouroboros virus that protagonist Chris Redfield is fighting, but the parasite's host is depicted as a nation of mobs and primitives who are violent even before their infection. What? They're violent before their infection? Have you been to Africa? Have you been to Nigeria? Have you been to these places where there's a lot of horrible violence going on because of the poverty and everything that's going on there? Like, it's not uncommon. And when there's violence in Los Angeles or Los Santos, or when there's violence in Liberty City or New York, or when there's violence in any other fictional or non-fictional country in a video game, why is that never criticized? When there's violence in Spain, in the fictional Spain that Leon Kennedy goes to in Resident Evil 4, where he's mowing down hundreds of Spanish people that have been taken over by the virus, whatever virus it is in Resident Evil 4. Why is that not an issue, but this one is? Because their skin's a bit darker? Anyway, let's keep going. Intentionally or not, Resident Evil 5 positions Africa as the dark continent, an uncivilized world harboring a diseased population that needs gunning down via West intervention in the name of global security. The way they fucking set this narrative is crazy. What are you talking about? Resident Evil 5 is just with Chris Redfield going down, killing a bunch of zombie people. That's it. It doesn't matter what they were before. You know, there's no underlying meaning there. It just takes place in Africa. Did you forget that one of the characters you play as is Sheva, a black woman? You complain all this time about representation, about people of color being a main character, females being a main character, and we have a genuine original female character, Sheva, who probably could be expanded upon in a remake, and you want to shut the whole remake down because you happen to shoot black people. If Chris was black, would that make it any better? Because how many games we play as a white character killing a whole bunch of other white characters? Sometimes these woke people or these activists or these well-to-do people make these articles and make these statements saying all this crap about how something is racist, but they don't really think about the implications of that, because what will happen is then there'll be never any black characters. No game will ever take place in Africa unless the game is about how white people have taken over Africa, and then you have to go to Africa and kill all the white people that are in Africa as a white savior, or a black person that goes to Africa and kills all the white people that are in Africa. Maybe you set the game in South Africa so there's white people there for you to kill. It doesn't matter, man. The game's set in Africa, so most likely the most people that are going to be infected by the virus is African black people. That's going to be the most likely thing. And you're saying that these people are disease-ridden. Where did you get that information from? They're disease-ridden because Wesker set the Ouroboros virus in there. That's why they're disease-ridden, not because they're Africans. You're the one who's suggesting that. If anything, you're the racist guy. You see black people as zombies and you automatically think racism. Why? No one thought this. When I played Resident Evil 5, I never thought this. But anyway. The argument and think pieces continued well into the game release window, having also wrestled with this subject. Oh, but that was 2009 when race was apparently a debate rather than reality. What? The argument and think pieces have continued well into the game's release window, with IGN's former editor-in-chief having wrestled with this subject, but that was in 2009. A time when race was apparently a debate rather than reality. So you're telling me racism is more of a reality now than it was in 2009. I wonder why that is. How can we be more racist in the future and less racist in the past? I wonder why that is. It might be something to do with what Morgan Freeman said and stop talking about it.
Black history is American history.
How are we going to get rid of racism until...
Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man. I know you as Mike Wallace. You know me as Morgan Freeman.
We didn't really talk about it back then that much. I mean, there was racism for sure, and there were certain aspects of racism you needed to talk about, but the way we're talking about it now is disingenuous, is opportunistic, and very grifty. That's how we talk about race today. And all it's doing is fanning the flames of division. That's all our conversation about race is doing today. Like, we were getting to a place where it didn't matter, and no one really read into race in this deep way that we're doing now. That's unnecessary, and all it does is cause division, and all it does is segregate all of us. In the 2020s, in a post-Black Lives Matter world, there is only one acceptable response to a white man shooting waves of Africans for an entire video game. No. What about Sheva? That's why they put Sheva in there. Sheva! That's why they put Sheva in there, to try and balance it out, because even in 2009, I guess it seemed a bit weird, but it shouldn't seem weird. Why is it fine for Leon to mow down waves of Spanish people, but it's not okay for Chris to mow down waves of African people? They're not Africans. They're zombies that have been infected by the Ouroboros virus. The fact that they're African has nothing to do with anything. It just happens to take place in Africa. You don't want games to take place in Africa anymore? Or can they only take place in Africa if only black people are involved? Like, we can have plenty of diversity in Western countries, but we can't have any diversity in Africa at all, you know? Because we want, like, in majority white countries, we want black people to shine, we want Asians to shine, women to shine, you know? Which is great. But no one can shine in an African country except a black person. Every other country has to be indigenous. Oh, I don't know. I don't even want to read this anymore, man. I think Resident Evil 5, vastly percent Capcom now has the opportunity to ignore the past and completely reinvent the show. No, we don't need to reinvent anything. Stop this modern audience bullshit. Stop this modern crap, because we can't even enjoy entertainment anymore. Modern writing, modern storytelling sucks. That's why there was an article not that long ago, look it up, about, it was asking why people are watching old shows, old TV shows, rather than anything new made post 2020. Everybody's watching the old classic shows like Friends, just older TV series. Because back then, things were made to challenge you, to make you think, to make you feel uncomfortable, and not in a woke way where it just irritates you, but it actually makes you think, you know? And now the writing has gotten so bad because everybody's so afraid to offend people that there's nothing interesting. There's no interesting storylines anymore. There's no challenging situations anymore in stories. There's no morally questionable characters anymore. Bad guys are basically good guys. They just have a bit of edge to them now. No, bad guys can't do anything bad anymore because it's offensive. Like, look at Roman Reigns. Look at Roman Reigns the other day when he called Seth Rollins a cross-dresser. People were actually getting upset about that on Twitter, not realizing that Roman Reigns is a heel villain in WWE. But anyway, no, we don't want, my point is, we don't want modern writing because modern writing sucks. We don't need a reinvention of a classic game that had it right the first time. And Resident Evil 5 isn't even that great because all the other stuff they said in this article is more or less true. But the race stuff, stop talking about that shit. We can mow down black people in Africa. I'm Nigerian, I'm African, it's fine. I played it not that long ago, a couple years ago, and I didn't get triggered by it. And younger Africans that haven't played it before, they shouldn't get triggered by it. But with articles like this, they probably will because you're telling them that they should get triggered by it. Stop this shit. I don't even want to read the other article now. It's set in Africa, blah, 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 blah. I've played the first of Resident Evil 5. Good majority of games shooting people with dark skin. There are moments that some will never connect with racism, but others will you see as a clear use of racist iconography. You can't have a white man and a black man fighting now and a white man winning because it looks like it could imply racism. Well, get that shit out of your head. It's because you're racist. You have these racist thoughts. The game begins with Chris Redfield walking through an African village that appears uninfected. He sees some men kicking something in a sack. The implication is that even before the infection, these are bad people. If RE5 was set in another continent, and these characters had white skin, no one would give it a second thought. Typical village full of bad guys gaming cliche. But these characters are black, and as such, the imaginary can be perceived to have racist undertones. Isn't that funny? It seems like this article was so much more like... This article from 2009 is so much... It's a woman that wrote it as well. This article, Hillary, this article... Oh, I think it's a woman. It's 2009, so it must be. This article actually has a little bit of nuance compared to the article of today. She said it herself. In a typical video game village, you don't really think of anything of it, but because it's a black man, it's a bad thing. That's our own racist biases. That's our own racist bullshit that we're projecting onto the game that's just telling you a story. And we need to get rid of that shit. It's really bad. But anyway, this video's gone on long enough. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below about IGN's saying Resident Evil 5 can't be made because it's racist. It's fucking ridiculous, I think. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for notifications, and I'll see you again. Peace.